Okay, Dylan, you're a resident scout. Kraken are picking at number two. Let's do a little bit of word association here. There's a lot of guys the Kraken could potentially take, and I want to hear what you have to say about some of them.
All
All
right.
right, so first thing that pops in your head when you hear these names. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Owen Power.
Big. he's
That's a,
he's obviously just a huge guy, but he's a great like offensive defenseman. I think he's kind of the clear cut guy who should go first. In my opinion, he's going to be the only guy not available to the Kraken, but he's got a fantastic like power play ability as a defenseman. He's going to be a power play quarterback, probably in Buffalo for a really long time. But just that size, he doesn't really use that size, which is unfortunate, but he's just massive. It's just
all right, we got power, size.
yeah,
All right, Matthew Beniers.
200-foot game. That's not technically one word, but I mean, he's the only guy in this draft class that you can see. A lot of people are comparing him to Bergeron. I don't know stylistically that he plays exactly like Bergeron, but he certainly brings that full 200-foot game where he's playing through all three zones. That's one of the things I've liked about him the most is actually how aggressive he is in the neutral zone. A lot of times you see players that are, they're good forecheckers, they're good back checkers in their own zone, but maybe through the neutral zone they let it off a little bit, but he's just full speed ahead the whole time, and it's fantastic to watch, and he's really smart too. So that's, I think, ultimately what leads to his good defensive ability.
All right, Dylan Gunther.
Scorer, I guess. He's not like particularly flashy, at least none of the stuff I've watched of him. But he just kind of scores, right? He's got a nose for the net, and it just happens. There are just guys like that, right? You can take two different players and they'll just both throw pucks at the net, and for some reason one of them will score 6 goals and the other will score 2, and they just kind of stay like that forever. I guess David Pasternak kind of is what he reminds me of a little bit, as far as where he likes to set up and what he does, and the fact that he throws a puck at the net and 20% of the time it just ends up past the goalie.
All right, now next one I'm looking forward to, Simon Edvinsson.
Creativity. So he's
Ooh.
the biggest boomer bust guy of all these guys, in my opinion. But his creativity is really next level. He will try to do things that most players probably couldn't even think of doing. And that's not always a good thing. I've seen plenty of times where he tries to force a pass or something that is like ridiculous, and you shouldn't be doing it. But at other times, he's making these fantastic plays that a defense has no idea is coming, and it's just especially special because he's 6'4", 200 plus pounds, and unlike Power, he will use that size, which is fun to watch. But he's definitely the most creative player.
Right. Okay. Luke Hughes, and the word can't be brother. Don't say brother.
Overrated. That's that.
Okay.
I think he's the most overrated of these like top 10 kind of prospects. I watch him. He's extremely confident with the puck, but I don't see him do anything exceptional with it. He's definitely offensive minded, but he's just, I don't know. I don't see much of either of his brothers in him, which is kind of interesting. But I don't know. He's just okay defensively. He doesn't do anything special on offense to me. Like I'm just struggling to see what that spark is other than his name that has everybody, clamoring for him.
Right. And then finally, Brent Clark.
Safe. He's the most complete, ready to go guy out of this whole group as far as playing in the NHL next season. He's definitely a point producing defenseman, no bones about that, and he does that really well. He had 7 points in 7 games at the U18s this past year. But he's really safe. I don't want to say robotic because he's not really robotic in his movements, but I did scout a player years ago who, he was going to make the safest play every time. Like the team, like whatever structure he was playing in, he was just going to make the play that structure told him to make. And Clark isn't as extreme as that, but he's kind of close. Like he's the opposite of Edvinsson. Edvinsson is just going to make things up as he goes, and he'll try to force things when he shouldn't necessarily try to. Clark is going to play it safe, except he's going to decide to join rushes fairly frequently. That's really when he breaks away from that safeness, is if they're moving out of their own zone, he's just going to skate faster than, one of his wingers and end up being the third man on the rush. That happens quite a bit. But other than that, I'd just say, yeah, he's the safest player to pick, I think, this year. He's the most surefire, probably going to be able to play, 800 games.
Right. Now that's really good. This is really good. Like I like this word association thing. I think, that was good. Now, of all these guys, do you think they're all candidates for the Kraken to take? Do you think every single one of them is potentially in play at number 2, or are there some guys that you think maybe they won't be looking at?
I think of those guys, most of them are. I would say I don't think Gunther or Edvinsson are probably going to be picked at 2. I think the boomer bust potential of Edvinsson, I think he might fall a little bit. I think teams might talk themselves out of him. We always see that player every year where, teams do that for whatever reason, and then some, lower lottery team gets a great steal. I think that'll probably be him this year. And then with Gunther, I just think it's partly because he's a winger. So it's kind of hard to be like, yeah, let's take a winger at 2, especially when we're building, our prospect pool from nothing. I think you'd probably want to play it a little bit safer and take one of the defensemen or Beniers because of just the position he plays.
Right. Now, lastly, you're a scout for Ron Francis. Let's imagine. Mm-hmm. What are you telling him to do? With what you know right now.
With what I know right now, I would tell him to take either Beniers or Clark, because I think they're the most like surefire. We're not going to miss. No one's going to be able to look back and be like, oh, that was the guy the Kraken took first overall, and it's a trivia quiz question because it was a bad thing, right? Like you don't want the first pick to be like Cody Glass with Vegas, right? Where we're here, 4 years later, and he's, kind of bouncing between the AHL and the NHL. He played just a handful of games for Vegas this year. Like we don't want to be in that situation. So for that reason alone, I would say Beniers or Clark, because I think they're definitely the safest. They're the guys that I can most easily see playing, 10 plus years in the NHL. And really, it's not like they're bad players. It's not like by choosing the safer option, you're leaving a lot on the table. Beniers is going to be a fantastic 2C. I don't think he's going to be a top line center, just because of the style he plays and stuff. He's probably going to max out at around 60 points a year. But again, you're talking about a guy that you can put out there to shut down any team's top line and, leadership, right? Like you want guys like him that are going to put max effort into every single shift and never quit on your team. And I think that's special. And with Clark, you also have that leadership there because he's a guy who left. He was playing with the Barrie Colts in the OHL. COVID hit. He knew he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time in, if any at all. And so he literally at 17 moves to Slovakia to play hockey this year so that he can get the max amount in for scouts to see and just to, keep himself in shape and everything. So I think he's obviously a mature man. And I think that's something that, you also want, because this guy's going to be the face of the franchise for a little bit, right? He's the first pick. Right. So he's the future of it all. So I think you want somebody who can, handle that.
Right. Now, one more word association thing before we go. After we've experienced another draft lottery, NHL draft lottery system, current draft lottery system. Go.
It's so bad. Like, I don't understand why it's so bad. Just the whole Arizona Coyotes thing alone was such a nightmare. So obviously Arizona they have to forfeit their pick this year, but they were left in the lottery. Now, I originally thought, well, they'll leave them in the lottery just so that the odds stay consistent year after year. And then if Arizona wins, well, then they'll just move up, but they'll still have to forfeit that pick. And so everything will still play out that way. But no, it was if Arizona wins, we'll just redraw. if you're gonna just redraw because this one team won, why even have the lottery? Like, that defeats the entire purpose and integrity of the lottery itself. What if they had won on the second draw? Do you just redo the second draw, or were they going to redo the whole thing? It makes no sense to me. So, and that's the other thing. Why is there multiple drawings? Like, have the lottery just be for first place so that you get rid of the most obvious of the tanking teams. But this whole, we're going to have it be the first 3 picks, and then, there was a lot of issues with that. So now it's the top 2 picks. It's just also arbitrary, but, it's the NHL. It's not like they know what they're doing for most things.
Approaching the better figure every day. It seems like 3 to 2, maybe we'll get to 1.
Yeah. All right, RJ, I won't do a full word association thing with you, but who do you want the Kraken to take it to?
Right. Now, when you're drafting like in the top 2 like the Kraken are, I have a little bit of a different philosophy. I think that they should kind of go for upside. I think upside's really important. If you're going to be drafting a, guaranteed, second liner or whatever, those are guys you can usually get in the middle of the round or a little bit later. But if you're drafting at number 2 overall, I think you want to go for some of the higher upside guys. But that puts the Kraken in kind of a difficult spot this year because some of those higher upside guys, like you mentioned, Simon Edvinsson, or maybe Eklund as a winger, William Eklund, or one guy I've looked at, Kent Johnson. I mean, of all the forwards, it seems to me like he might have the most upside. Like watching him and Beniers play together on the same line at Michigan. Beniers, he's clearly the more well-rounded player, the more, ready-to-go player at the moment. But watching Kent Johnson next to him, I just think this guy's maybe even got more potential to be kind of an impact forward. So it's tough for the Kraken drafting at number 2 when, a guy like Kent Johnson or, even Edvinsson might be available a few picks later. And so it seems like a reach at number 2, but I think you have to go with a guy who can be a star for you. So that's what I would do. I would say whoever has the most upside that the scouting staff feels, go for that. Don't be afraid to swing for the fences.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally viable too, right? Again, you're starting from scratch, so you can afford to just commit to an ideology and kind of stick to it for a couple of years and see how it all plays out. The other thing is, realistically, this probably isn't going to be their only first round pick.
Right.
But it's hard not knowing where some of those other picks might come from. If one's coming from Montreal, well, that Montreal pick's starting to look a lot lower than we would have said it would a week ago. So my philosophy is played a little safer at 2 and go ahead and take some of those gambles later with any other first round picks you get. But yeah, I see what you're saying totally, and I agree. Kent Johnson is probably the highest upside forward, but he's also that biggest question mark, very much like Edvinsson on the blue line. So it'll be interesting. I also think it's interesting, this year, what a shock when, most developmental leagues didn't have full seasons. We're talking about all these guys who are playing college because they were all, the overagers. So that's another thing that I think teams are going to have to factor in is, well, do we maybe look at a guy like a Brent Clark because he's, almost like a full year younger than everyone else just because, but he played less because of COVID and all that stuff. There's less tape on him. So it'll be interesting to see how scouting staffs and teams try to break all this down and figure things out. But that wasn't the only Kraken news this week. That was obviously the biggest Kraken news this week, but there was a still significant story that broke, right?
Right. Now, last week, the Kraken announced the Climate Collective, which will be the in-arena food and beverage program at Climate Pledge Arena. There's the executive chef, Molly Demers. She says that our culinary team is focused on creating a quintessentially Pacific Northwest culinary experience that's sure to leave guests feeling a strong sense of hometown pride. Now, Demers spent the last 3 years as the executive chef at the Seattle Aquarium, so she already has this kind of experience, in that kind of position and in the area. So she knows kind of the local market and what people want. Now, as you'd expect, the Climate Collective has some ambitious commitments focused on the environment and sustainability. 75% of food ingredients will be sourced from within a 300-mile radius. You've got organic produce, cage-free eggs, grass-fed beef, fair trade certified coffee, and sustainably caught seafood. So, that's obviously a big commitment in sourcing their food. And, props to Climate Pledge Arena for taking the initiative and kind of making sure that everything with the food behind the scenes is really done right. But what I was really excited about with this announcement was the local restaurant partners. So we've got Ballard Pizza Company, we've got Din Tai Fung, we've got Metropolitan Grill, Elliot's Oyster House, Lil Woody's, and Just Poke. And the arena says there are many more partners to come. So we'll stay tuned for those announcements. And, as nice as it'll be to have, that kind of fine dining, fancy cuisine, we saw it in the video they shared. For those who'll enjoy it, that's great. But, these restaurant partners, this is my kind of food, like Din Tai Fung especially. Like, I can't wait to have some dumplings at Kraken games. So Dylan, of these food partners, so many good options. I gotta know, which sounds best to you?
Yeah, I mean, so let everybody in on a secret about me. I'm an extremely picky eater.
Yes.
Yes, it's caused many problems in my life. But it's, for me, I've only ever eaten probably two things going to a hockey game, and that's either a plain hot dog with just ketchup on it or a slice of cheese pizza. So for me, most excited about having pizza there because that's something I'm actually going to eat and I will enjoy. But yeah, I mean, I'm just happy that they're, staying so local with it all. They're supporting local small businesses and restaurants and stuff because that's what we wanted this to be. That's what they said it was going to be. And it's nice to know that they're actually following through with that. Right. And that's something that I think is going to be, in some ways unique to them. Obviously, you and I come from California where that is not really something that happens, right? Everything is corporate sponsorships, right, and that is just what it is. And so this kind of new experience for us it's refreshing, and it's something I'm looking forward to. So that's it for Kraken News this week. As always, let us know down in the comments below your thoughts on anything we talked about today. Who do you want to see the Kraken take it to? Do you agree with us on our analysis of these guys? Do you have someone we didn't mention? There's tons of great prospects this year. And also, let us know your thoughts on the food selections we're going to have at Climate Pledge Arena. What are you looking forward to eating at the first Kraken game you go to? Make sure to like this video, as always, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time.